In the August of 1914, Jane Pembroke and her daughters are in the city of New York and its environs, beyond the clutches of the Reverend Gaumont and his vendetta against the Pembroke family and their lilac sanctuary. By sending his family away, Henry Pembroke had half hoped that perhaps the entire business with the Reverend would exhaust itself. Unfortunately, while the Reverend has publicly claimed to have instructed his attorneys to call off lawsuits against the Pembrokes and their lilacs, he has resorted to more subterranean means of driving that family from his land. In the wake of raised brows in Harborview over Diana Pembroke's surprise marriage in the Empire State, rumours have also started to circulate regarding her father Henry and an employee at the Lilac Sanctuary. The Reverend Gaumont will use anyone and everyone connected to the Pembrokes to bring about the family's humiliation, destruction, and departure from halfway there. It is 15-year-old Nancy Dawson, who lives across Delaney Road from the Pembrokes with her widower father Thomas, who suspects the black hand of the Reverend in the continued troubles of her neighbours. In the course of writing her Neighbourhood Society column, aspiring investigative journalist Nancy will soon learn a hard lesson about life at halfway there. If you stare out at Delaney Road long enough, you just might end up becoming part of the story yourself. Annex, the continuing story of a peculiar bend in the avenue. Traffic goes north, traffic goes south. The streetcar runs between, and all we can do is try to keep up. From Halfway There Society by Nancy Dawson.
May I lead with a disclaimer? I am not a gossip. I am a journalist. My assignment, issued by those sage personages at this fine newspaper of standing here in Harborview, is to report on noteworthy events in my territory as established. This bend in the road known as Halfway There to longtime residents and appears on old maps bearing the name of Halfway. To many, it is just that, the halfway point between Harborview to the north and Delaney City to the south, with Delaney Road the only conveyance between the two, and a car line as well. Yet, it is more than a midpoint, more than a state in between. It's a state of mind itself. Sometimes, strange things happen here. I've only been here with Father since the spring, but already it's been impressed upon me the odd character of where we've made our new home. For the purposes of this column, it is not my intention to spread gossip or foster rumors about our halfway of life. However, it can't possibly all be birthday cakes and babies and burials. Intrigue is settling over Halfway There, the same way that fog rises out of the swamp and onto Delaney Road in the early morning, making all look to have been molded from mystery. Without malice, it must be observed that this fog-like intrigue appears to have settled most visibly around the Pembroke family, of this past year settled on Delaney Road to operate a lilac-growing concern. Just a month ago, Jane Pembroke and her daughters Diana and Sophie departed for the east with sightseeing, given as their reason for making their voyage. Yet darker talk along the road holds that Mr. Henry Pembroke sent his family away to protect them from the notorious Reverend Gaumont, whom I have not had the displeasure of meeting. Yet I am aware of him, for he passes our home and leers up at the window so. Can he see how I shrink away so when he turns his eye upon the front window? I should certainly hope not. After all, I've heard the ghost stories about the Reverend. Never mind, for Henry Pembroke placed too much faith in a summer's idol. His eldest daughter left as Diana Pembroke, socially prominent young lady of Harborview's effervescent youth set. She'll soon return to Harborview, not as Diana Pembroke, but as Mrs. Lowell Putnam, on account of her unanticipated wedding in Manhattan this past week, in which she became the wife of the divorced industrialist Lowell Putnam, nearly 30 years her senior. The newlyweds will enjoy an extended honeymoon back east, while Jane and Sophie Pembroke will return to Harborview and Halfway There much sooner than expected or planned. Of Diana's marriage to Mr. Putnam, those close to Jane and Sophie report that they are, like all of us in Harborview society, surprised. Imagine how they'll feel upon returning home to the Pembroke Lilac Sanctuary, and a scandal steeping. The scandal, whatever the truth of it, began when a young woman was hired to work as a clerk and cashier at the Pembroke Lilac Sanctuary. Lila Shore, French in background, was a true lover of the lilac and horticulture in general and appeared a fine candidate. Now, the rumors. It has been circulated that Lila is, in truth, a chippy, hired to dawdle and shimmy around the sanctuary for the benefit of Henry Pembroke, with Lila's proximity proving especially useful with his wife and daughters out of the country.
The very idea, the very brazen nature of it all, installing that woman so close to home and hearth, the old goat didn't even try to make it appear plausible that she was there.
She wasn't hired to tend to lilacs. She was hired to tend to Hank Pembroke. Lord.
People behaving like that, like animals. They don't know how to live here halfway. They shouldn't be able to live here.
Some have even asked if Pembroke hasn't perhaps masterminded the entire feud with the Reverend Gaumont, taunting and tormenting the old man in order to cover up his own salacious wanderings from the Pembroke marital bed.
Very clever of Pembroke to ship his wife and girls out of the country just in time for summer and Lila season. For their own safety, he says.
And then to go and blame the Reverend Gaumont for it. I didn't buy it then, not completely, and I don't buy it now. Clean as a whistle, unless you bother to ask questions.
Fine way of creating a distraction. It's so obvious I could just spit.
These accusations have flown asunder these past 2 weeks, endangering the reputations of Pembroke and Miss Shore, as well as the lilac-growing business. By all accounts, Lila Shore is a lovely young woman, above suspicion despite her rather indistinct past. Henry Pembroke is my neighbor and seems a fine man. For my part, I do not believe the rumors to be true. Mr. Pembroke is old enough to be her father. Then again, such an age difference didn't exactly stop Pembroke's daughter from marrying a man of 50 and divorced at that. Still, I say without reservation that these rumors of infidelity are unfounded and offensive, more than likely part of a wicked campaign against Mr. Pembroke, his interests, and his family. Lila Shore, meanwhile, has been seen spending a great deal of time with Nathaniel Gaumont, the previously meek and reclusive son of the Reverend Gaumont himself. Lila appears to be drawing the best from him, helping him to grow into the man he was meant to be and might have made had it not been for the stultifying presence of the seemingly immortal Reverend. They appear to be very much in love, and marriage seems likely, despite all the rumors. Nathaniel and Lila had tried to keep their time together a secret from the old man, although Lila is said not to have understood at all why this was necessary. But he did learn of their stolen moments. Shortly after, a new rumor began going round about Lila. This time that she was illegitimate when she is, in fact, an orphan of tragic circumstances. Of course, this cannot be proven because Lila has misplaced her documentation and something about an orphanage fire in a French suburb. The timely release and appearance of this rumor so close upon the discovery of Nathaniel and Lila's love has led me to conclude the identity of the fork-tongued fiend behind the onslaught against Henry Pembroke and his, none other than the Reverend Gaumont. That is exactly what I say now. The most likely rumor monger is the Reverend Gaumont, who has not fallen quiet or into defeat at all. What matters that he has dropped his legal pursuits against the Pembrokes? His war has moved underground, and it lies, my friends, directly beneath the feet of everyone residing at halfway there on Delaney Road. The Reverend Gaumont demands the return of his land and is preparing to strike decisively. These rumors are but the tenderizing. The old man moves against his own son and the son's beloved. He seeks to grind the Pembrokes beneath the heel of his boot. This obsession with his farmland sold away unjustly and his unholy belief that he could snatch it back. That obsession and the coming onslaught are the deathly quiet that has settled over Delaney Road in this late summer, with fall not far behind.
This was Nancy's last Neighbourhood Society column for the Harborview, and it was not published due to its inflammatory accusations against the Reverend Gaumont, shading comments regarding Diana Pembroke, and wild speculation about Henry Pembroke and Lila Shore. Officially, Nancy was fired because she had failed to cover a key wedding anniversary and an entire ream of ladies' club meetings, instead turning in her own paranoid ramblings. It was of no small consequence either that the Reverend held sway over the newspaper itself through decades of Harborview connections. You might think that Nancy Dawson has been told to sit down and shut up, but you'd be wrong. and the Reverend Gaumont is indeed pursuing an alternative course of action against his declared nemesis, the largely perplexed Henry Pembroke. To find out what that alternative course of action might be, listen to the next episode of Annex.